The stars looked the same everywhere in the galaxy, but Commander Taman Park knew that was a lie. Every system held different dangers, different opportunities, different lives. His ship, the Remembrance, moved quietly through the outer fringe territories, far from Earth and far from the established trade routes that most species preferred. Taman sat in his command chair, watching the sensor displays with tired eyes. They had been mapping this region for 3 months now. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. Humanity was still new to the Galactic Council, only 20 years since first contact. They got the boring jobs, the dangerous jobs, the jobs that nobody else wanted. The communications officer, a young woman named Hana Kim, suddenly sat up straight at her station. "Commander, I'm picking up a distress signal." Taman leaned forward. "What kind of signal?" "It's weak. Very weak and old. The encryption is Velrian." Hana's fingers moved quickly across her console. "Sir, the Velrians. Their homeworld was destroyed 6 months ago. The Krathul Dominion glassed the entire planet. Everyone on the bridge knew about that. The news had spread across the council like wildfire. A whole species nearly wiped out in a single brutal attack. The council had held meetings, made speeches, offered condolences. But they had done nothing. The Krathul were too powerful, too well connected. Interfering would have been politically inconvenient. "Can you locate the source?" Taman asked. Hana nodded. "Sending coordinates to navigation now. It's close, maybe 2 hours at current speed. Change course. Maximum speed." Taman stood up from his chair. "All hands to stations. We might have survivors out here." The Remembrance turned and accelerated. Taman knew they might be flying into a trap. The Krathul sometimes left survivors as bait, waiting for rescue ships to arrive. But he also knew that if there were real survivors out there, they had been waiting for 6 months for someone to care enough to help. When they arrived at the coordinates, what they found broke Taman's heart. The Velrian ship was barely functioning. Its hull was cracked and burned, atmosphere leaking from a dozen breaches. Life support was failing. There was no way it should still be flying, but somehow it was. Someone aboard had refused to give up. "Hana, open a channel." The response came immediately, a voice speaking in broken galactic common. "Please, help. Children aboard, please." Taman didn't hesitate. "This is Commander Taman Park of the human vessel Remembrance. We're coming to get you." "Hold on." The rescue took 4 hours. 4 hours of careful work, moving survivors through makeshift airlocks, carrying the injured, the sick, the dying. The Velrians were bird-like creatures, fragile and beautiful, with feathers that shimmered in colors humans had never seen in nature. There were 37 of them left, 37 survivors from a species that had once numbered in the billions. Hana worked in the medical bay, treating injuries that were months old, burns that had never healed properly, broken bones that had set wrong, starvation and dehydration. These people had been dying slowly in the dark while the galaxy moved on and forgot about them. The eldest Velrian, a male named Chirik, was the one who had sent the distress signal. He had kept it broadcasting for 6 months, using every last bit of power the dying ship could generate. When Hana brought Taman to see him, Chirik was lying on a medical bed, his breathing shallow and weak. "You came," Chirik whispered. His voice sounded like wind through leaves. "I did not think anyone would come." Taman pulled up a chair and sat beside him. "I'm sorry we didn't come sooner. I'm sorry we couldn't save more of your people." Chirik's large eyes blinked slowly. "You are human, yes?" "The new species. The young ones, yes, were human. The council, they did nothing. They said it was not their concern." Chirik coughed, a terrible rattling sound. "They let my people die because it was convenient." Taman had no words for that. It was true. The council had abandoned the Velrians because opposing the Krathul would have required courage and sacrifice. It was easier to offer sympathy than assistance. "There is something I must give you," Chirik said. He reached under his blanket with a trembling wing and pulled out a small data crystal. "Before our world died, we hid things. Technology, knowledge, history, everything we were. The locations are in this crystal." Taman took the crystal carefully. "Why give this to us?" "Why not keep it for your people?" Chirik's eyes closed for a moment. "My people are dying, human. Even these survivors. We have no world, no future. But you came when no one else would. You cared when caring was inconvenient." He pressed the crystal into Taman's hand. "Promise me something." "What?" "Promise me that someone will remember us. Promise me that our existence meant something, that we were not just forgotten." Taman felt something break inside his chest. He closed his hand around the crystal. I promise. Humanity will remember the Velrians. I swear it, Chirrut smiled, showing his small beak. Thank you. That is enough. 2 hours later, Hana rushed into Taemin's quarters. Her eyes were red from crying. Commander, you need to come to medical, now. Taemin ran. When he arrived, he found Hana standing beside one of the Velrian females. The female was in labor, her body racked with pain. The other Velrians had gathered around, singing in their language, a sound like bird calls at dawn. Hana grabbed his arm. Sir, I don't know if I can do this. Velrian biology is different from ours. The scanners say the baby is in distress. I don't know if either of them will survive. Taemin looked at the gathered Velrians, at their desperate, hopeful faces. He looked at Hana. You can do this. I believe in you. It took 3 hours. 3 hours of careful work, of consulting databases, of making impossible decisions. But finally a cry filled the medical bay. Not a human cry, but the high, clear sound of a Velrian infant taking its first breath. The gathered Velrians erupted in their singing. The mother, exhausted but alive, reached for her child. Hana placed the tiny creature in her wings, tears streaming down her face. What will you name him? Hana asked. The mother looked at Taemin, then at Hana. His name is Pip. It means hope in our language. That night, Chirrut died. He went peacefully, surrounded by his people, knowing that their last child had been born and that someone had promised to remember them. Taemin made the report to Earth and to the Galactic Council. Earth's response was immediate and clear. Bring the survivors home. Give them sanctuary. Honor the promise. The Council's response was different. They sent a formal message expressing their relief that survivors had been found, but they also included a warning. The Krathul Dominion had claimed all Velrian territories and resources. Interfering further could be seen as an act of aggression. They strongly recommended that humanity avoid any actions that might destabilize galactic peace. Taemin read the message 3 times. Then he deleted it. He went to his private quarters and activated his personal recorder. What he said next would be broadcast to every human colony, every human ship, every human being in the galaxy. This is Commander Taemin Park of the Remembrance. 6 months ago, the galaxy watched as an entire species was murdered. The Galactic Council did nothing. They said it was not their concern. They chose convenience over conscience. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Today we rescued 37 Velrian survivors. We made a promise to them. We promised that humanity would remember when the galaxy chose to forget. He held up the data crystal. The Velrians have entrusted us with their legacy. Some will say we should ignore it, that honoring this debt is not worth the cost. I say that we are defined by the promises we keep, especially when keeping them is hard. Taemin looked directly into the camera. The galaxy is watching to see what humanity will do. They think we're weak because we're young. They think we'll forget like they did. They're about to learn something important about humans. He leaned forward. We don't forget. We never forget, and we always pay our debts. The message ended. Taemin sat in the darkness of his quarters, holding the crystal, and wondered if he had just started a war. 6 months had passed since the remembrance brought the Velrian survivors to Earth. 6 months of heated debates, angry meetings, and increasingly desperate attempts to make the Galactic Council understand what was coming. Ambassador Jiho Kang stood in the council chambers, looking at the assembled representatives of 200 species. Some were humanoid, some were not. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, but they all had one thing in common. They were comfortable, safe, protected by treaties and agreements that meant nothing when tested. The Krathul Dominion is expanding, Jiho said, his voice echoing in the massive chamber. They have conquered 14 systems in the past year. They are enslaving populations, strip mining worlds, and destroying anyone who resists. The Velrians were just the beginning. A representative from the Tharian Collective, a species that looked like floating jellyfish, rippled its tentacles dismissively. The human delegate exaggerates. The Krathul are aggressive, yes, but they respect boundaries. They will not attack council member worlds. They attacked a human research station 3 weeks ago, Jiho said flatly. 300 scientists died. Men, women, families. The Krathul broadcasted the attack as a warning. They told us to mind our own business. The chamber erupted in whispers and clicks and sounds that human ears couldn't properly interpret. The Tharian representative floated higher. That station was in disputed territory. Perhaps if humanity had not been so aggressive in its expansion. Aggressive? Jiho's voice rose. We were studying stellar formation. We had no weapons, no military presence. It was a research station. An elderly Korthan delegate, reptilian and ancient, spoke with a voice like grinding stone. The human raises valid concerns. But what does he propose? War with the Krathul? That would destabilize the entire sector. Jiho looked around the chamber, seeing the fear in their eyes. Not fear of the Krathul. Fear of inconvenience. Fear of having to actually do something. I propose that we honor our treaties. That we stand together against aggression. That we show the Krathul that there are consequences for murder. The laughter started small, but it spread. Species that had been part of the council for thousands of years. Laughing at the human who thought principles mattered more than politics. The Therian representative spoke again. The human is young. Their species does not understand how galactic politics work. Sometimes, Ambassador Kang, peace requires accepting uncomfortable realities. The Valerians made poor choices. They refused to negotiate with the Krathul. Their destruction was unfortunate, but it was their own fault. Jiho felt something cold settle in his chest. You're saying they deserve to die. I am saying that survival requires wisdom. The Krathul are strong. Opposing them achieves nothing but adding human casualties to Valerian ones. Is that what you want? To throw away human lives for a dead species? Jiho gathered his papers slowly. He looked at each delegate, memorizing their faces. My people made a promise. We promised to remember the Valerians. We thought that meant remembering their history, their culture, their contributions to galactic civilization. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We were wrong. Remembering them means understanding why they died. They died because when they needed help, the galaxy laughed at them. He turned to leave, then stopped. History will record what happened here today. When the Krathul come for you, and they will come, remember that you chose this. You chose comfort over courage. You chose convenience over conscience. The chamber fell silent as Jiho walked out. On Earth, Admiral Sujin Choi stood in a secure facility buried deep beneath the mountains. Around her, scientists and engineers worked frantically on projects that officially didn't exist. Show me, Sujin said to the lead scientist, a man named Minho Yoon. Minho pulled up a holographic display. The Valerian data crystal contained more than just history. It contained weapon specifications, technologies that predate the current council by thousands of years. The display showed a ship design unlike anything humanity had built, sleek, deadly, covered in weapon systems that seemed to defy physics. The Valerians were pacifists for the last 3,000 years, Minho continued. But before that, they were warriors. They fought wars that nearly destroyed their species. Then they chose peace and hid their weapons technology, swearing never to use it again. Can we build these? Sujin asked. We already are. We've been building them for 5 months, combining Valerian designs with human innovation. Minho's fingers danced across the controls, and the display shifted to show massive shipyards in orbit around the moon. We've constructed 43 warships so far, each one capable of taking on 10 Krathul cruisers. Sujin studied the ships. They were beautiful and terrible. How long before they're operational? 2 weeks, maybe less. Minho looked at her. Admiral, are we really going to do this? Are we really going to war? The Krathul already started the war, Sujin said. They just don't know we're fighting back yet. On the remembrance, Taman read reports about his sister. She had been on the research station when the Krathul attacked. Her name was Yunji. She had been studying solar flares, trying to predict them so that colony worlds could protect their populations. She had never hurt anyone in her entire life. The Krathul had killed her because it was convenient, because she was in the way, because her life meant nothing to them. Taman's wife, Yuna, found him sitting in the dark staring at Yunji's picture. You need to sleep, Yuna said gently. I can't, Taman whispered. Every time I close my eyes, I see her. I see all of them. Yuna sat beside him. This isn't your fault, I know. But it's my responsibility. He looked at her with red eyes. The council won't act. They're going to let the Krathul keep killing until there's no one left to kill. So what will you do? Taman was quiet for a long time. Then he said, what we promised. We'll remember, and we'll make sure the galaxy never forgets. In the medical bay, Hana played with young Pip. The Valerian child had grown quickly in the past months. He could speak now in both Valerian and Galactic Common. He was clever and curious, asking endless questions about everything. Hana, Pip said, his child's voice like a tiny bell. Why are the other humans sad? Hana picked him up gently. Because some bad people hurt us. They hurt our friends, they the Krathul. Yes, Pip's feathers ruffled. They hurt my people too. They made my mother cry. They made everyone cry. Hana hugged him close. I know, little one. I know. Will you stop them? Pip asked. Will you make them go away? Hana thought about all the political meetings, all the debates, all the careful words designed to avoid commitment. Then she thought about the promise Taman had made to old Shirik. She thought about the 300 humans who had died for no reason except that they were in the way. Yes, she said firmly. We'll stop them. How? By being braver than everyone else. 3 days later, every human ship in the galaxy received the same message. It came from Earth, signed by the President of the United Earth Government and countersigned by every colonial governor, every military commander, every elected representative. The message was simple. Humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We cannot in good conscience remain part of an organization that values political convenience over sentient life. We will not forget the Velrians. We will not ignore the Krathul threat. We will not sacrifice our principles for comfort. The message continued. Effective immediately, humanity declares war on the Krathul Dominion. We do this not for territory or resources. We do this because a promise was made and humanity keeps its promises. We do this because if we don't stand against evil now, we will have no right to complain when evil comes for us. The final words were broadcast across every channel, in every language. The galaxy taught us that memory is inconvenient. The galaxy taught us that principles are for the weak. The galaxy taught us that survival means forgetting. The galaxy is about to learn that humans don't forget. We never forget, and we always pay our debts. In the council chambers, the assembled delegates watched the human announcement in stunned silence. The Therian representative finally spoke. They're committing suicide. The Krathul will destroy them in weeks. The old Korthan delegate was not so sure. He had lived for 300 years and had seen species rise and fall. There was something in the way the human president had delivered that message. Not desperation. Not bravado, just certainty. Perhaps, the Korthan said slowly, or perhaps we have made a terrible mistake. On Earth, Taman stood on the bridge of a new ship. Not the Remembrance. Something bigger, stronger, deadlier. The ship was named Yunji's Vengeance after his sister. Around him, 42 other warships hung in space, crews ready, weapons charged. Sujin's voice came over the command channel. All ships report ready, Commander Park. We await your order. Taman looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Krathul were celebrating. They had crushed the Velrians. They had cowed the Council. They had killed humans and faced no consequences. They thought they had won. They were about to learn the difference between victory and survival. All ships, Taman said calmly. Jump on my mark. Target Krathul forward operating bases. Rules of engagement, total war. No mercy for military targets. Show them what happens when you make humanity remember. He paused, then spoke the words that would echo across the galaxy. They taught us the price of peace. The Krathul military commander Veshinar was enjoying his morning meal when the alarms began screaming. He was a massive creature, over 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales that could deflect most energy weapons. The Krathul had conquered 17 species in the past century. They were predators, apex creatures who viewed all other life as either prey or obstacles. Veshinar activated his command display, expecting to see a minor border dispute or perhaps a foolish pirate raid. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. 3 Krathul military installations spread across 2 systems were under simultaneous attack. The attacking force was unknown. The signatures didn't match any known Council military vessels. Report! Veshinar roared at his communications officer. Sir, we're receiving distress calls from Outpost Kresh, Station Viral, and the military depot at Thresh. All 3 are reporting massive damage. Energy signatures are off the scale. They're requesting immediate reinforcements. Who's attacking? Them? The communications officer looked up with confused eyes. Sir, the identification beacons say they're human. Veshinar laughed. The humans? The weak, soft species that had only joined the Council 2 decades ago? The species that cried about their research station? How many ships? We're reading. 43 vessels, sir. 43? Veshinar's laughter died. The humans don't have 43 military ships. They barely have a defense fleet. Sir, these ships are not in our database. They're new designs. And sir, the officer's voice trembled. Outpost Kresh just went silent. Complete loss of signal. That was impossible. Outpost Kresh had shields that could withstand sustained bombardment for days. It had weapon platforms that could destroy a small fleet. It had over 10,000 Krathul soldiers. Get me a visual, Veshinar commanded. The screen showed Outpost Kresh, or what was left of it. The massive military installation was now a field of debris. Nothing remained but broken metal and frozen bodies spinning in the void. The attack had lasted less than 20 minutes. Get the Dominion High Command, Veshinar said quietly. Tell them the humans have declared war, and tell them we might have a problem. On the bridge of Yunji's vengeance, Taemin watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Krathul outposts had fallen exactly as predicted. Fast, clean, overwhelming. All ships report successful strikes, his tactical officer reported. No friendly casualties. The Krathul forces were completely unprepared. Taemin nodded. That's because they thought we would fight like the Council fights, with rules, with honor codes, with warnings and negotiations. He leaned back in his chair. They forgot that humans wrote the book on total war. Minho's voice came over the command channel from one of the engineering ships. Commander, the weapon systems performed flawlessly. The Velrian designs combined with human targeting algorithms are devastating. The Krathul shields couldn't adapt fast enough. Good. What's our intelligence saying about their response? They're mobilizing their third fleet, approximately 200 ships. They're treating this as a minor border incident, not a full-scale war. Taemin smiled without humor. Then let's educate them. All ships proceed to Phase 2. Target their supply lines. I want every fuel depot, every ammunition stockpile, every repair facility within 3 jumps of here turned into scrap. Show them what happens when logistics fail. The human fleet split into smaller task forces and vanished back into FTL. They moved like ghosts, hitting targets that the Krathul thought were safe, then disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. It was guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale, and the Krathul had never experienced anything like it. The Krathul fought civilized wars. They assembled their fleets, declared their intentions, and met the enemy in open battle. It was honorable. It was predictable. It was how wars had been fought in the galaxy for thousands of years. Humans didn't care about civilization. They cared about winning. In the council chambers, the delegates watched the war unfold with growing horror. The human attacks were brutal, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. In 2 weeks, humanity had crippled a quarter of the Krathul military infrastructure. They're fighting like animals, the Therian representative said, its tentacles writhing in agitation. No honor, no respect for the customs of war. They strike. From hiding, they target supply lines instead of military vessels. They use deception and trickery. The old Korthan delegate watched the tactical displays with ancient eyes. They are fighting to win. There is a difference. This is barbaric. The council must intervene, must force both sides to negotiate. The council had its chance to intervene. The Korthan interrupted. When the Velrians died, when the human research station was destroyed, we chose comfort. Now we watch the consequences. On a human colony world called New Sol, the warning siren sounded in the middle of the night. The colonists, 20,000 of them, had only minutes to reach the shelters before the Krathul bombardment began. The Krathul had decided that if humans wanted war, they would get war. They sent a fleet to attack civilian targets, to show humanity the cost of defiance. They expected the humans to break, to beg for mercy, to remember their place. They were wrong. The bombardment killed 3,000 colonists before the human defense fleet arrived. 3,000 people who had been farmers, teachers, shopkeepers. People who had never hurt anyone, who had come to the stars looking for a better life. The footage of the aftermath was broadcast across every human world. Children's toys floating in destroyed homes. Schools reduced to rubble. Gardens burned to ash. The Krathul expected this to break human resolve. Instead, it did the opposite. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Factories that had been building civilian ships switched to warship production. Scientists who had been researching peaceful technologies began designing weapons. Every human colony, every human ship, every human being in the galaxy united with a single purpose: make the Krathul pay. Hana watched the footage from New Sol with Pip in her arms. The young Velrian was crying, his small body shaking. Why? He kept asking. Why do they hurt people? Hana had no answer for him. She was a doctor, trained to heal, to preserve life. But watching the destruction, watching the innocent dead, something changed inside her. Some questions couldn't be answered with words. Some evils couldn't be healed. They could only be stopped. Hana, Pip whispered, I'm scared. So am I, little one. So am I. Admiral Sujin received the reports from New Sol while planning the next major offensive. She read each name of the dead, all 3,000 of them. Then she called her fleet commanders. The Krathul have escalated, she said calmly. They've shown us what kind of war they want to fight. A war against civilians, a war against innocence, a war without rules. Her face was cold as ice. Very well. We'll give them that war. But they're going to learn something important. Humans are very, very good at fighting dirty. She pulled up a tactical map of Krathul space. Operation Reckoning begins now. We're taking the war to their home systems. We're going to burn their supply lines, destroy their shipyards, and show them that there is nowhere safe, nowhere they can hide. One of her commanders spoke up. Admiral, that will require us to split our forces across a dozen systems. It's risky. Everything worth doing is risky, Sujin replied. The Krathul think they can terrorize us into submission. They think we'll break like the Velrians did. They're about to discover that humanity doesn't break. We bend, we adapt, and we come back harder than before. She looked at each commander in turn. I'm not asking you to fight with honor. Honor is what got the Velrians killed. I'm asking you to fight to win. Use every trick, every tactic, every weapon we have. The Krathul want total war? We'll give them total war, human style. The fleet commanders saluted and returned to their ships. On a distant world, Jiho stood before a crowd of refugees. Not just humans, but members of species that the Krathul had conquered or displaced. Thousands of beings who had lost everything. Some of you have asked why humanity is fighting, Jiho said. You've asked why we would risk everything for a promise to a dead species. You've asked if we're crazy, if we're suicidal, if we're fools. He looked at the faces in the crowd. Fear, hope, desperation. The answer is simple. We're fighting because someone has to. We're fighting because the alternative is a galaxy where might makes right, where the strong prey on the weak, where civilizations can be erased and forgotten. An alien in the crowd called out, "But you can't win. The Krathul are too strong." Jiho smiled. That's what they said about humanity when we first reached the stars, that we were too weak, too young, too foolish to survive out here. But we survived. We thrived. And now we're going to do something that the galaxy thought was impossible. What? We're going to teach the predators that sometimes prey fights back. The fleet assembled in deep space, far from any inhabited system. 43 ships had become 90. 90 had become 150. Human shipyards were working around the clock, and every new vessel that came off the production lines was faster, deadlier, more advanced than the last. Taman stood on his bridge and looked at the fleet. Each ship represented thousands of workers who had volunteered their time. Each weapon system represented scientists who had given up sleep to perfect the designs. 2 years had passed since humanity declared war on the Krathul Dominion. 2 years of brutal, relentless fighting that had changed the galaxy forever. The Krathul homeworld hung in space like a jewel, beautiful and deadly. It was a massive planet, 3 times the size of Earth, covered in sprawling cities and military installations. For 5,000 years, the Krathul had ruled from this world. They had never known siege. They had never known fear on their own soil. Now, 180 human warships surrounded their planet like a noose tightening around a throat. Admiral Sujin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, watching the Krathul homeworld through the viewscreen. Her fleet had fought its way through 17 defensive lines to get here. They had lost ships. They had lost friends. But they had won. Status report, Sujin commanded. Her tactical officer pulled up the displays. Complete blockade established. No ships in or out. All orbital defense platforms destroyed. Krathul fleet remnants scattered across the outer system. They're trying to regroup, but we have them contained. And the planet, surrounded. No bombardment per your orders, but nothing gets through our blockade. They have maybe 3 months of food supplies. After that, the officer didn't finish the sentence. Sujin nodded slowly. 3 months. 3 months for the Krathul to realize they had lost. 3 months to decide whether they would surrender with dignity or force humanity to do something terrible. On the planet below, the Krathul High Command met in emergency session. The chamber was filled with the largest, most powerful Krathul warriors, leaders who had spent their entire lives believing in their species' superiority. Supreme Commander Throcknall slammed his massive fist on the table. This is impossible. How did a species of soft, weak primates defeat us? How did they reach our homeworld? His advisors had no good answers. The humans had fought like nothing the Krathul had ever encountered. They had used tactics that were considered dishonorable, uncivilized, barbaric. They had targeted supply lines, used guerrilla warfare, employed psychological operations that had broken the morale of entire Krathul fleets. The humans had done something unthinkable. They had adapted to Krathul biology and created weapons, specifically designed to exploit their weaknesses, sonic weapons that disrupted Krathul equilibrium, chemical agents that made their armored scales useless, viruses that targeted their food supplies. We must negotiate, one of the younger commanders said. Request terms of surrender. The Galactic Conventions? Throcknall's laugh was bitter. We ignored those conventions when we destroyed the Velrians. We violated them when we attacked human civilian colonies. And now you want to hide behind them? Then what do you suggest? That we fight until our world is destroyed? Throcknall looked around the chamber at his fellow commanders. They were scared. These mighty warriors who had conquered worlds, who had never known defeat, were terrified of the humans circling above them. We offer conditional surrender, Throcknall decided. We will disarm our military by half, pay reparations, withdraw from conquered territories. But we will not accept occupation. We will not be humiliated. The message was sent to the human fleet. The response came within an hour. Sujin read the Krathul surrender offer and felt nothing but cold fury. Conditional surrender, half measures. The Krathul still didn't understand. She composed her response personally. The Krathul Dominion seems to misunderstand its position. You are not negotiating from strength. You are not our equals at this table. You are a defeated enemy who has committed atrocities across the galaxy. Our terms are simple: unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, war crimes tribunals for your leadership, reparations to every species you have harmed, construction of a memorial world for the Velrians. These terms are not negotiable. You have 48 hours to respond. Admiral Sujin Choi, Commander of United Human Forces. When the Krathul received the response, the High Command erupted in rage. Unconditional surrender? Tribunals? A memorial for the Velrians? It was unthinkable. It was humiliating. They dare? Throcknall roared. They dare demand this from us? What choice do we have? The young commander asked. They control our space. They control our orbit. They can starve us or burn us. What choice do we have? Throcknall's eyes blazed with hatred. We have the choice of dignity. We have the choice of dying as warriors rather than living as slaves. Send the humans our response? Never. In the council chambers, delegates from across the galaxy watched the standoff unfold. The human broadcast was being transmitted openly, available to anyone who wanted to watch. The galaxy was witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity had brought the mighty Krathul to their knees. Jiho stood before the council, older now, harder. 2 years of war had changed him. You asked what price humanity would pay for honor, he said to the assembled delegates. Now I ask you, what price will you pay for your cowardice? The Therian representative's tentacles twitched nervously. Ambassador Kang, we acknowledge that humanity has achieved. Unexpected success. Perhaps now is the time for the Council to mediate peace. To find a solution that satisfies all parties. All parties? Shiho's voice was ice. Tell me, where was the Council when the Velrians died? Where were you when New Sol burned? Where were you when human colonies were attacked? You sat in these chambers and did nothing. You chose comfort over courage. An elderly delegate from the Marathi consensus spoke up. Ambassador, we understand your anger. But surely you do not intend to destroy an entire species. The Krathul homeworld has 8 billion civilians. They are not all warriors. Many are innocent. Jiho looked at the delegate with tired eyes. Do you know how many Velrian civilians died? 6 billion. Do you know how many human civilians the Krathul killed? 53,000. Do you know how many other species lost innocent lives to Krathul aggression? Millions, he paused. We are not destroying the Krathul. We are offering them something they never offered their victims. A choice. Surrender and live. Continue fighting and starve. Those are fair terms. More than fair, but unconditional surrender is what you demand of an enemy who has proven they cannot be trusted. Jiho's voice echoed through the chamber. The Krathul have violated every treaty, broken every promise, committed every atrocity, and now they want conditions? They want to negotiate. They lost that right when they chose to be monsters. The chamber fell silent. Then slowly something unexpected happened. A delegate stood up. Then another. Then another. Species that had watched from the sidelines, that had been too afraid to act, were now standing in support of humanity. The Korthan delegate spoke, his ancient voice carrying weight. The human is correct. The Council's inaction enabled the Krathul. Our fear made us complicit. It is time we face that truth. More delegates stood, not all of them, but enough. Enough to show that something had changed in the galaxy. On Earth, Taman sat in his quarters reviewing intelligence reports. The war had aged him. Gray hair now streaked his temples. Lines marked his face. But his eyes were still sharp, still determined. There was a knock on his door. Come in, Hana entered with Pip walking beside her. The young Velrian was taller now, his feathers bright and healthy. He had grown up during the war, had seen things no child should see. Commander Park, Pip said formally. He always called Taman by his rank. May I speak with you? Taman smiled. Of course, Pip, sit down. Pip settled on a chair designed for his bird-like body. I have been watching the news. The Krathul refuse to surrender. Many humans want to destroy their world. Yes, Taman said quietly. Many do. Will you? Pip's large eyes were serious. Will you do to them what they did to my people? Taman was silent for a long moment. It was the question that haunted him every night. The question that had split humanity into two camps, those who wanted total destruction of the Krathul, and those who believed in mercy even for enemies. I don't know, Taman admitted. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to make them feel every moment of pain they caused, to make them understand what they took from the universe. But, Pip prompted, but that would make us like them. It would mean the Krathul won, even in defeat. They would have turned us into the monsters they always believed we were. Hana spoke for the first time. The Krathul think we'll break. That will become cruel. That war will corrupt us, Taman nodded. Yes, and that's why we can't. That's why we have to be better. We have to show the galaxy that justice and vengeance are different things. Even if it costs more human lives? Hana asked. Even then, Pip looked at both of them. My people chose peace. It didn't save us. But maybe it saved who we were. When I die, I will die a Velrian, not a monster. That matters. Taman reached out and gently touched the young Velrian's shoulder. You're right. That does matter. On the Indomitable, Minho approached Sujin with a datapad. His hands were shaking. Admiral, I need to show you something. Something we discovered in the final Velrian data caches. Sujin took the datapad and read. Her eyes widened. Is this real? Yes, ma'am. It's a weapon. Ancient Velrian technology from before they chose pacifism. It's a biological agent specifically designed to target Krathul DNA. If we deploy it, the entire Krathul species would be extinct in 72 hours. No survivors. Total extinction. Sujin stared at the specifications. One weapon. The 48-hour deadline passed. The Krathul High Command sent no response. On the Indomitable, Admiral Sujin prepared her fleet for what everyone feared would come next. A full planetary assault that would cost millions of lives on both sides. Taman arrived on the flagship for the final command briefing. Around the conference table sat the leaders of humanity's war effort. Admirals, generals, politicians, all of them looked exhausted. 2 years of war had drained everyone. Intelligence reports that the Krathul are fortifying their cities, the intelligence chief reported. They're preparing for ground combat. They intend to make us fight for every street, every building. Casualties will be catastrophic. Sujin looked at the projections. 2 million human soldiers would be needed for a full invasion. Estimated casualties 40%. That meant 800,000 dead or wounded, and that was just human losses. Krathul civilian casualties would number in the millions. There has to be another way, Jiho said. He had come up from Earth specifically for this meeting. We didn't fight this war to become butchers. We gave them a choice, one of the admirals said harshly. They refused. What else can we do? Let them starve? That's even crueler. We can wait, Taman said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. Wait for what? Sujin asked. For them to understand. The Krathul have never been defeated before. Never. Their entire culture is built on the idea that they're the strongest, the most powerful. That belief is what's stopping them from surrendering. Taman stood and walked to the view screen showing the Krathul homeworld. But every day we sit here, every day their people go hungry. Every day they look up and see our ships in their sky. That belief breaks a little more. You want to starve them into submission? The intelligence chief looked uncomfortable. The Galactic conventions say that sieges are permissible when direct assault would cause greater casualties, Jiho interrupted. We're not targeting civilians. We're not bombing their cities. We're just waiting, giving them time to make the right choice. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted immediate assault. Others wanted to intensify the blockade. A few quietly suggested deploying the biological weapon that Sujin had ordered destroyed. In the end, Sujin made the decision. We wait 2 more weeks. We broadcast our surrender terms daily. We show them that we're not monsters, that we're not going to slaughter them. We give them every possible chance to choose life over death. And if they still refuse? An admiral asked. Sujin's face was stone. Then we do what we must. But we try peace first. That's what makes us different from them. On the Krathul homeworld, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Food riots had broken out in 3 major cities. The military was fracturing as junior officers began questioning their leader's decision to fight to extinction. In the high command chamber, Throcknall faced a rebellion. 5 of his 8 commanders had turned against him, demanding that he accept the human terms. We cannot win, Commander Rethkal shouted. Every day that passes, more of our people die. For what? For pride? For glory? Those things mean nothing to the dead. We are Krathul, Throcknall roared back. We do not bow to inferior species. We do not— Inferior? Rethkal's laugh was bitter. They defeated us. They surrounded our homeworld. They broke our fleets. In what universe are they inferior? The argument raged, but Throcknall could see the truth in his commander's eyes. They had lost faith. The unbreakable Krathul spirit had finally broken. On a transport ship heading toward the fleet, Hana and Pip watched the broadcasts from the Krathul homeworld. Human intelligence was intercepting Krathul communications and translating them. What they heard was heartbreaking. Krathul children crying from hunger, parents trying to explain why the sky was full of enemy ships, teachers telling their students that they might not survive the week. It was the sound of a civilization dying, and it was horrible to witness, Hana, Pip said softly. If the Krathul surrender, what will happen to them? They'll face justice. War crimes tribunals for the leaders. The military will be dissolved. They'll have to rebuild everything they destroyed, including a world to honor my people. She looked at the young Velrian. Why do you ask? Because I don't want them to die. I know they killed my people. I know they're terrible, but Pip's voice was small. I don't want more death. There's been too much already. Hana pulled him close. You're a better person than most, Pip. Your people would be proud. On the 13th day of the extended deadline, something unexpected happened. A single Krathul shuttle launched from the planet without authorization. It broadcast a message on all channels. Human fleet, this is Commander Rethkal of the Krathul Defense Force. I am requesting permission to come aboard. I wish to negotiate surrender. Sujin authorized the shuttle to land. Rethkal was brought to the conference room under guard, though the guards were barely necessary. The Krathul commander looked defeated, his scales dull, his posture slumped. Supreme Commander Throcknall refuses to surrender. Rethkal said without preamble. He would rather see our species extinct than bow to humans. But he does not speak for all Krathul. Many of us. We understand that we have lost. We understand that we deserve to lose. Your High Command authorized this negotiation? Sujin asked. No, I'm acting against orders. When I return to the planet, I will likely be executed for treason. Rethkal met her eyes. But that is acceptable. If my death can save my people, it is a worthy trade. Taman leaned forward. What are you proposing? A coup. 5 of 8 High Command members support surrender. We will remove Throcknall and those loyal to him from power. Then we will accept your terms. All of them. Unconditional surrender. In exchange for what? Jiho asked suspiciously. Nothing. No conditions. No demands. We surrender completely. Rethkal's voice was heavy. I only ask one thing, not as a condition, but as a request. Be merciful to our civilians. They did not choose this war. Many of them opposed it. They are victims of our leadership's arrogance, just as your people were. The room was silent. This was it. The moment that would define the end of the war. Sujin looked at Taman, then at Jiho. Your opinion? We accept, Taman said immediately. This is what we fought for. Not extinction. Not revenge, justice. Jiho nodded agreement. The Velrians believed in mercy. If we reject this offer, we dishonor their memory as much as the Krathul did. Sujin turned back to Rethkal. Return to your planet. Do what you must. We will not interfere with your internal politics. When you are ready to formally surrender, contact us. We will accept. Rethkal stood and gave a Krathul salute, a gesture of deep respect. Thank you, Admiral. History will remember this moment. It will remember that humanity offered mercy when they could have chosen vengeance. 3 days later, the news broke. Supreme Commander Throcknall and his loyalists had been arrested by the Krathul military. A new provisional government had formed, led by Rethkal. Their first official act was to broadcast an unconditional surrender to the human fleet. The war was over. The celebrations across human space were muted. Too many people had died. Too many families had lost loved ones. This was not a triumphant victory. It was a terrible necessity that had finally ended. 6 months later, the Galactic Council convened in a historic session. The Krathul leadership stood before galactic tribunals, facing justice for their crimes. The trials were broadcast across every world, every species watching as the mighty Krathul answered for their atrocities. Throcknall, defiant to the end, was sentenced to life imprisonment. Rethkal, who had cooperated fully, received a lighter sentence and was eventually pardoned for his role in ending the war. The council itself underwent massive reforms. Species that had stood by during the crisis lost influence. New treaties were written, with humans playing a central role. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson, that civilization requires courage, not just philosophy. On a newly terraformed world, a ceremony took place. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species gathered to witness the dedication of the Velrian Memorial World. The entire planet had been transformed into a living monument, covered in gardens and monuments celebrating Velrian culture, art, science, and history. Pip, now an adult Velrian, stood before the gathered crowd. He was the last of his kind, the only Velrian left in the universe. But he was not alone. Beside him stood Hana, who had adopted him all those years ago, and around him stood representatives of every species in the galaxy. My people are gone, Pip said, his voice carrying across the memorial grounds. But they are not forgotten. When the Krathul tried to erase us from history, when the galaxy chose to look away, one species refused. One species remembered. He looked at the human delegation, at Taman and Sujin and Jiho, all older now, marked by the war they had fought. Humanity gave us back our name, our memory, our dignity. They paid in blood for a promise made to dying strangers. They showed the galaxy that debts of honor matter more than political convenience, that some things are worth fighting for, even when the cost is terrible. Pip spread his wings wide, the beautiful feathers catching the sunlight. The humans did not save my species. We were already lost, but they saved something more important. They saved the idea that civilizations are measured not by their power, but by what they're willing to sacrifice for those who cannot defend themselves.